Welcome back to the University of Life and the final layer of Identity 101, potential. You know, when I was 4 years old, I was living in California and I went to a Halloween party. I was dressed as a little devil, had a cool little plastic devil stick like this, which I thought was so cool. And one of the events they had there was a box maze. So I got down on my knees and I crawled into the darkness. Not too far down the boxes I found, I turned to the left. So I turned left and went about another 8 feet maybe, and I ran into a dead end. Now my little 4-year-old mind, maybe it wasn't the brightest, but I just naturally assumed that was the end of the maze. There was obviously nowhere else to go. So I sat there in the dark, and as other people came scooting, crawling through that maze, I would helpfully reach out my little devil stick and poke them and say, "There's no way out." But the strangest thing kept happening. These people kept disappearing, and I got to wondering where they went. So eventually I crawled down that little passageway and found I could turn left. So I turned left, and I ran into another dead end. But I learned my lesson. I backed up a little bit, I turned right, and eventually another 20 or 30 feet, I found my way to the kitchen and all the cookies and goodies. So it turned out okay. Now you may think you would never be so dumb as to get stuck in a box maze, because you know it's completely artificial, right? You could stand up at any time, rip those boxes apart, and have the whole world. You could go anywhere you want. There's no limitations. That's reality. But if you treat this like a metaphor, then that's actually pretty much the way we live our lives. What would you say? Maybe 70% of the time? For some people, probably 95%. Here's what happens. You're born, you learn to crawl, you begin to get a sense of who you are and where you belong and what you're worth. But as soon as you run into a dead end, your brain kind of learns this lesson and says, well, I guess I can't do that. I guess I can't go there. And it holds on to it. That's the way the subconscious is wired, unfortunately. And it kind of defends that. And so your thoughts, your perceptions, your beliefs about who you are, these really become your prison. And for all intents and purposes, that's your whole universe. You know, what you believe is possible for you, that's where you live, that's where you exist. And if you try and escape it, your brain is going to throw a tantrum. It's going to scream and throw up its fear and its doubts and its excuses. Oh, I could never do that, right? And defend your little world. Well, that's what Identity 101 is all about. We're here to stretch those bars, to take a step out beyond them, have some new experiences, and suddenly now this becomes part of your prison, you know, but it expands wider and wider. And when you really learn your lesson, that all those limitations are just illusions and you could actually do anything you really want, the most beautiful and interesting and kind of paradoxical thing happens. You know, we've spent all this time working on learning who you are and appreciating all your different traits and natures and experiences and possessions and whatever. But once you really get it down, you don't need them anymore. They're like a crutch and they start to fall away and you take yourself for granted. That is the ultimate goal of Identity 101, is to just say, I'm free, I can do anything. You see some opportunity that looks interesting, you say, I'll take it. You know, see something maybe it's a little expensive, but if you can afford it, you're like, I can afford it, it's worth it. You know, I'm worth it. Maybe you meet someone who's a little bit intimidating, but they seem interesting and cool, and you're like, I want to meet that person. And you're like, I can do that, why shouldn't I? You know, you can travel the whole world. The whole universe of possibilities opens up to you. Another benefit, this is something I observed in friends like in high school who had lived in other countries. When I was 7, I lived in Brazil for a year, and I remember the Roy Lances who had just moved back to the States from Germany. And it seemed like these people and others who had lived abroad and had this big, vast wealth of experience, they seemed more solid, so much less drama. You know, if someone didn't like their shoes or something wasn't fashionable or somebody thought they were uncool or said something mean, that comment, that experience was such a thin, narrow slice of their life experience that it really didn't hold that much weight. It didn't matter so much. It's just like they transcended it. They rose above it. It was not really a big deal. And isn't that the way it ought to be? Because those things aren't a big deal. Like, you have incredible value. You are worthwhile, you're interesting, you're capable of doing so much as long as you believe it, and at least enough to give it a try. You can do so much. You can live a great life. So that's the goal of the whole University of Life, is to help you live your best life and just make it extraordinary. And it's completely within your grasp. You just have to believe it. You know, you just have to get that vision. So if you don't feel that way yet, if all your doubts and fears and inhibitions have not yet melted away, go back through the videos, do some more exercises to learn who you are and become more aware and have some fun at it. And it'll come true for you. Of course it will. That's how things work. So thanks for watching. Remember to subscribe. We'll continue delivering our best content, all our best ideas we can to make your life extraordinary. And until the next time, live smart, live happy.